Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. I want to tell you, they lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
Welcome back to Harbaugh. This weekend, Donald Trump became the first major Republican candidate ever for president to accuse former President Bush, George W. Bush, of waging war based on a lie. To neutralize the former president as a surrogate for his brother Jeb, Trump is reframing the debate for 2016 as a referendum on Iraq. Trump's not backing off, as he made clear yesterday.
We weren't safe. The World Trade Center came down, which was the greatest attack in history on this country. So you had that. You obviously had the war, which was a big mistake. I mean, I think few people would say the war in Iraq was a positive. You had him on the aircraft carrier saying all sorts of wonderful things, how the war was essentially over. Guess what? Not over. The whole thing starts with the war in Iraq. You know, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. But one thing about him, he killed terrorists. Now Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq.
Wow. After his rally with the former president last night, Jeb today said he thinks his brother's appearance helped him in South Carolina.
I think my brother is well respected. He led this country during turbulent times, and he did it well. And people in South Carolina appreciate that. It's great that he came, and I think it made a difference.
Well, I'm joined right now by Republican Congressman Mark Sanford of South Carolina, former Florida Republican Party Chair Al Cardenas, who's an advisor to Jeb Bush, and conservative columnist Ann Coulter, who supports Trump. I've got to start with Ann because I have no idea where you're headed here. Here we are back into the old fight over Iraq, and even further back, the fight over 9/11. How is this going to affect what happens on Saturday in the Republican fight in South Carolina, especially regarding Jeb and Trump? Ann.
Well, what he said specifically about Bush lying to get us into the war about weapons of mass destruction, yeah, of course, that made my head explode. But whether it's Bush's fault or Obama's fault for pulling out every last troop, as I believe, going forward, I do, and I think most Americans agree with Trump, enough with the foreign wars. It didn't work. It's not working now. Again, whether it's Bush's fault or Obama's fault. And, you know, you watch these Republican debates, and at least for the first 5 of them, half of the debate is Republicans talking about the Quds and the Kurds. Can we get back to America?
The Quds and the Kurds. Thank you for the confusion there. Let me, Al Cardenas, thank you. You're a guy with Jeb. Is Jeb W? Would Jeb have taken us to Iraq? Would Jeb have done with all this neocon stuff? Would he have done all these wars?
I think Jeb's a lot like his dad. But I'll tell you.
I agree, by the way. But not like W.
Yeah, but I'm hearing Donald Trump. Here's a guy with a pretty significant lead in the party. And here's Rand Paul, who had to leave the race because people weren't buying into the libertarian approach to foreign policy in our party. I mean, in 2012, people thought Rand's point of view on foreign policy, my party, was pretty good. That's how the sequester came about. That's how we agreed on a sequester. Yeah. But here's Donald Trump following the lead of a guy who fell flat because the party's in a different mood regarding our foreign policy. Now, why in the world would Donald Trump begin talking about Syria, let Putin do it, about Iraq and everything else? The guy was in a commanding lead, and he's thrown the dice.
I don't know why he's taking a chance on knocking. He maybe wants the knockout. Anyway, let me go to Congressman Sanford. You know South Carolina, and you're not officially for anybody, but this looks to be, it really looked like a risky move by Trump to try to knock off Jeb on the issue of his brother's war. I mean, you have to go all the way back, and then going back to 9/11 and saying he didn't keep us safe. It looks like he's really, you know, this big casino. Why didn't he just roll the guy, as Al said, and beat him by 10 points, 20 points?
Again, I don't get it. I agree with Al. I mean, this is really rolling the dice, and one or two things is going to happen. I mean, he's going to win decisively in South Carolina, in which case, Katie bar the door. I think he goes all the way to win the nomination, given the things that he's said. I think it's going to be the reverse. Despite what the polls say right now, my take is that there's going to be blowback. That it's one thing to say something about, you know, a journalist in New York that people don't know that much about. It's another thing to say, hey, you knew 9/11 was coming and you did nothing about it. I mean, that goes to sort of the heart of American psyche, at least as it relates to South Carolina. What do we believe? What don't we believe? This stuff has long been discussed around the kitchen counter. And to throw that one out there, I mean, I think it's an incredibly risky maneuver.
On his radio show today, Rush Limbaugh compared Trump to liberal filmmaker Michael Moore. Here's Rush.
Here we are in a Republican primary, and Donald Trump, out of the blue, starts blaming the Bush family for 9/11, for knowing that the intelligence was made up, that there never were any weapons of mass destruction, and they knew it, Trump said. I mean, Michael Moore doesn't even say that.
Well, let me suggest something to you, Ann, and I think times have changed. People don't have a great feeling about the war in Iraq. We lost 4,000 people. A lot of people dismembered, changed for life for the worse. We're always talking about the veterans because of how badly they came home, a lot of these guys and women who were in for 4 or 5 deployments. That's another thing. The working class, regular guy and woman out there, they were going back and back and back, and the rich and the elite are saying, yeah, we don't mind that going on. That doesn't bother me. Well, why should it? I think people are mad about the trade deal. They're mad about illegal immigration, and they're mad about these deployments because there is a draft right now. It works this way. If you've enlisted, you go back in 4 or 5 times, and you have to. So I think there's some anger about the war now, about the whole war we went into. Your thoughts?
Yes, no, I agree. I think on 3 positions, trade, immigration, and foreign wars, Trump is illustrating how the Republican Party and the establishment has been forcing Republicans, the entire GOP, into taking suicidal positions. That is not where the American people are. And I have to say, I do think Trump is on much firmer ground and is making an important point, although not as well this time as he has in the past, about Bush being president when the 9/11 attack occurred. Look, 1 year before 9/11, in a debate with Al Gore, George Bush specifically raised racial profiling of Arabs at airport security. 1 year later, the ticket agent who took Muhammad Atta's ticket said he got a chill to the bone. He wouldn't give it to him, but he gave himself a politically correct mental slap. Trump has said in the past the reason 9/11 might well not have happened if I were president is those 19 hijackers wouldn't have been here. He's not enforcing politically correct rules. And by the way, Bush then went on to promote amnesty. We never had a vote on Bush after this, but we had a vote on Republicans in Congress, and Republicans were wiped out in 2006 because Americans don't want amnesty. Keeping the borders open, political correctness, and specifically no racial profiling of Arabs at airports. Yeah, actually, I think you kind of can say there's some partial blame there for...
Hey, YouTube fans, I'm Luke Russer. Thanks for checking out our MSNBC channel. Subscribe by clicking right here and click any of the videos over here to watch the latest breaking news, mini documentaries, conversations from Shift, and other digital exclusives. Check it out.
And his associations are now raising questions about what we as a country can do to prevent these types of individuals from entering the United States in the first place. Now, should this impact our current immigration policy? Now, earlier I sat down with Ann Coulter to get her take on this pressing issue. All right, joining us now, the ever shy Ann Coulter. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right. All right. Now, we have the Boston bombing. We learn a lot of things that our law enforcement screwed up. Our Department of Homeland Security, CIA was warning about this guy, FBI was warning about this guy, the Russians were warning about this guy. Yeah. How does this connect to the immigration debate? Because you were on the cover of Drudge last week, and the issue was immigration. It's not just about borders, it's also about visas.
Right, right. Well, as I've mentioned before, Teddy Kennedy's 1965 Immigration Act was specifically designed to bring in mostly third world immigrants and to block immigrants from the countries that we've traditionally taken immigrants from, with a made-up America, i.e. Europe, heavily Europe, and so I went through recent mass murders committed by immigrants who come here, can't make it in this country. They're angry at the country and lash out at Americans. There are about a dozen of them just in 2010, 2011, 2012, committed by immigrants who were not, doing the jobs Americans wouldn't do. They were here like Suspect 1 and Suspect 2, which, by the way, have become the popular way to identify them because no one can pronounce their names. They're here. The family's on welfare. The suspects are on welfare. And meanwhile, they're talking about how they hate America.
But the Saudi, this was a stunning statistic to me. Saudi Arabia literally had a 500% increase since 9/11/2001 in student visas.
Right.
All right, here's my question.
And let me add to that point, often the refugee status, the asylum status is based on these guys being considered, you know, they're being persecuted by their home governments. Sometimes they're being persecuted for the reason. I think that's how the blind sheikh got in. The guy who shot up the Empire State Building, he gets in, or maybe it was at the El Al counter at LAX. They get in because, you know, they're members of the Muslim Brotherhood, and Egypt doesn't like the, or whichever country it was, doesn't like the Muslim Brotherhood. Why are we bringing them in?
Yeah, no, we can be pretty stupid as a country. We have dumb politicians. Here's my question, though. If you grow up in Saudi Arabia, for example, let's see, you grow up in a society where women must be covered, where women cannot drive, women cannot be seen in public without a male that they are related to. They have the morality police walking around. You need 4 male eyewitnesses to prove rape.
Right.
And we know the issue of divorce and marriage and men.
Right.
You know, it's a
and that culture is coming here instead of them becoming assimilated in our culture.
But here's my question. But the point is, growing up there and then coming here, if you've been taught that that's the right way, then you're going to think that America's evil and open, and, well, look, women aren't covered. They're in bikinis.
Right.
I mean, shocking.
No, not only that cultural difference, but because our immigration policy does not discriminate in favor of people who are educated, who speak English, who have skills we need, we are bringing in, you know, pushcart operators, or these guys up in Boston who had no visible skills. I mean, the one where the father talking about, oh, he was going to be a great doctor. He was studying to be a nurse, and he was failing all of his courses. How is this an addition to America? And the important point, I think, you have recent immigrants, 85% are from the third world. More than 60% of them need government assistance. Now, you know, the amnesty advocates, like Rubio, will say, oh, but it's only 30% more than the native-born Americans. My point is 0 immigrants should be collecting government assistance. If you are collecting government assistance, it seems to me, can't we all agree you are not the kind of immigrant we need in America here? 0 immigrants should be committing mass murder.
If you grow up in a society that has Sharia law as its basis in law, you have been indoctrinated into a system that is totally, completely, and utterly contrary to our Constitution and our way of life.
Yes.
Are we making a mistake by just assuming, oh, everybody's inherent, natural, God-giving desire to be free will transcend whatever cultural mores you were indoctrinated into?
You're absolutely right. And 2 points on that. We've completely given up trying to assimilate them. We do not have, you know, I mean, the worst place to send, I would say, anyone is to an American university. You could go into the University of Patriot. You're going to come out hating America. And this is supposed to be good for us. Bring them. They already hate America. The second point is, I mean, there is a reason, for example, the Constitution says that to be president, you have to have been born in the United States. And it isn't just Obama that started these conspiracy theories. Chester Arthur, his father was from Canada, and there was a big hoo-ha over, was he an American? Because there is an idea that they were, I think, the only 2 presidents whose parents were not both born in America. There is something to having been here, to having been native. We know we have our own native-born losers, murderers, welfare recipients. Fine, we'll deal with them. Why are we bringing them in?
Why are we importing more?
And on your point about how they're brought up in the culture and everything, when I was speaking at Syracuse last week, an angry third worlder, I think a Muslim, got up and asked a question and said...
Why do you say Muslim? What it's Muslim?
Anyway, I'm trying to be sensitive to how they say it. Okay. And he said, oh, but you have to understand, I mean, with an accent, clearly an immigrant, you have to understand that the reason we hate America is because of the things America's doing around the world. And he was very angry about it. And I said, look, fine, I understand that. My point is, you should not be immigrating here. Stay in your country and hate us.
Hate us over there. Yeah. I've never understood the American left and why they are not more outspoken, as conservatives are, for women's rights, that women that live under these oppressive regimes, that live under Sharia law, for example.